Today, we're going to talk about the crucial conversations about sex before sleeping with a man. And I'm really excited to have a guest today who's an educator and couples coach focusing on ethical non-monogamy. Ali Eisman, welcome in the house.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're going to have a spicy conversation because we're going to talk about something that my vanilla audience that's predominantly partnership-based is not used to. We're going to talk about did I say it right? Ethical non-monogamy?
Yeah, you'll hear terms ethical non-monogamy, ENM. You'll also hear consensual non-monogamy or CNM, and they basically mean the same thing.
Okay, consensual. So why don't you just give us a quick, 40,000 foot of what that is?
Sure thing. So basically, ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, it's an umbrella term for a lot of different types of relationship styles, and they all fall under that umbrella. And it basically means having multiple, emotional, intimate, sexual, physical partners simultaneously with the full knowledge and informed consent of everyone involved. So that means everyone knows what's going on. There's been lots of negotiation, discussion, what this means, who's who to what and how and all that fun stuff. And we can dive into more of that later.
Okay, so let me just tell you what I just pictured for a moment. I'm picturing a harem with all these people hanging around. I'm picturing orgy. And folks, I know who know me, know this might be off of kilter what I normally do. But what struck me as most important about this, of what Ali just said, is it's about having crucial conversations with people, particularly when it comes to your body. So, and that's what I appreciate most, because quite frankly, in the vanilla world, and I'm calling it vanilla, Ali, I don't, from that vantage point, people are afraid to talk before they're physically intimate. We have to play this stupid dance. So what would be can you give us an example of a crucial conversation that you're going to have with somebody?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I saw some of the little teasers in there in the comments. Absolutely. You're discussing your sexual health. You're discussing your current relationship dynamics. There's a great framework called RBDSM, and it kind of guides you through.
Say that again. What?
RBDSM. It's a great conversation framework. So it's a nice just format for how to briefly touch on some really important key conversations, some really important things to talk about before you're engaging with someone, whether it's sexually, emotionally, anything intimate, before you're willing to, invest in whatever degree you're looking to. Talking through something like RBDSM, you talk about your relationship. What are your current relationship agreements? Are you partnered? Are you not partnered? Is what we're talking about doing falling within those agreements? B is boundaries. What are your yes, no, maybes? What are those, non-negotiables in this thing we're about to explore?
Okay.
S is your sexual history. So what is your current STI status? When's the last time you were tested? What were the results? You are encouraged to show those results to each other. There's plenty of apps out there. You can log in and show people your current STI results. So that's RBDS. D, desires.
That's you forgot the D. I was like,
we gotta touch on the desires.
I was writing this down. Okay.
What are we doing here? Why are we doing this? What do you want? So what are your desires? What experience do you want to have today? How do you want to feel leaving this? How do you want to feel during it? And then M, what is the meaning? The M is actually my favorite. What is the meaning of this connection for you? Because I think exactly what you touched on, there's a lot of fear, right? Of course there is. We're not taught these skills. They feel scary because they're new. And there's all these assumptions that go into dating and relating these days. So when we're learning this new skill, it's really helpful to have frameworks like RBDSM to walk through these conversations. And meaning is so juicy because we can go in with the assumption, let's say we're going to have sex. To me, that means we're dating. To the other person, that means we're having a fun night together. No one's wrong. But if you're not discussing it to make sure you're on the same page and negotiating something that works, then you're just setting yourselves up for a lot of heartache that's not necessary.
Well, right off the bat, I'm listening to this and I'm like, well, this can be applied to the monogamous world, not necessarily 100%. The ethical non-monogamous world. And my point of bringing this up is that I love this. RBDSM, BDSM.
Yeah, I think that's a fun one to remember.
Is that, and even Debbie just pointed out, is that,
Yes.
don't assume, I feel as though that we, at least again, I'm using the term vanilla, but I'm just saying, most people that want a monogamous type of experience, they operate, at least in our current dating environment, based on assumption.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and by the way, a few months back, I had an anthropologist who specialized in kink. And one of the same thing, the reason why I had her on is even in that world, if you will, and kink's definition isn't what I thought it was,
Yep, it surprises a lot of people.
It's really more about, kink is more, let's have conversation. We know we're going to have sex. Let's figure out what each other likes, what we don't like, and have these conversations before, please forgive me, this is something I say to my audience all the time for heterosexuals, before the penis goes inside the vagina, we're going to have a conversation.
I sure hope so.
Well,
I really do. And that's some of the fun, that's the fun stuff. That's the foreplay, right? Like you're getting to know each other, you're flirting with your minds, your energy. There's so much to explore that gets you ready and excited for that next stage. And just having those things laid out when you start kind of stripping away those layers of assumption, that's how you're building actual intimacy, regardless of what parts may or may not go into what parts. That's intimacy.
Well, it's interesting that you said foreplay, because I know that, and I'm just going to out myself here, and let's go back 10, 15 years ago when I was pretty active in the online dating community, and I was doing even experiences with long distance. I found that if I could have sex conversations, start talking about sex and get a flavor of what they thought about it, sex, it was almost guaranteed sex when I met the person. And that's the old Jonathan. I don't operate in that same vein, but from a selfish point of view. But on one level, I would think that if two people are planning on meeting from a dating perspective, coming back to relationship and the meaning, then I think, given that, most, we'll call them romantic relationships for a moment, sex is the differentiation between family, friends, coworkers, that sort of thing. So having these conversations would be radically important. So how do you begin the conversation when you're talking to a total stranger?
Well, and I'll introduce the idea that sex is neither necessarily the only differentiator or a differentiator between that.
Okay.
Sex is a differentiator between a person in your life who you are having sex with and a person in your life who you're not having sex with. You can have romantic connections without sex. You can have sex without romance. These are the ingredients. This is what I love talking to clients about, is we do a lot of what are called compound meanings. Kind of lump a bunch of terminology together. A big one is love, sex, and commitment. Those aren't synonyms. Those are ingredients. So that's why having these conversations are really, really important. So just to bring it back, sorry, can you rephrase your question one more time? I want to make sure I address it.
Oh, I'm ADD. It just went out.
We need a note taker who's taking out two ADHDs.
So why I was saying that is, and again, maybe it's because I focus more on my world of people who want romantic partnerships, romantic relationships, long-term commitment from that vantage point, is sex is kind of the differentiator between family, friends, and that sort of thing. Not to suggest you can't have friends with benefits, casual relationships, situationships, all that such. But here you've met a stranger, maybe through a dating app, and it's vanilla, if you will. Or it's under the guise of monogamy, if you will. And I'm using this is how, or even in the ethical non-monogamous world, if we can,
non-monogamous,
and that doesn't sound right, but you get where I'm going with that, is when two people meet or connected, typically through a dating app these days, most people connect through some sort of online connection. When would you want to start having a conversation about sex, and how would that even begin?
Well, I think it's important to look back at that M that we talked about in RBDSM, because so many of us will even land on that first date, or even, those first, texts back and forth or whatever it is. And then we're already layering in a bunch of meaning We're never talking about it. And we end up on that first date and we assume that that get together means the same thing, to the other person as it does to us. And we make a bunch of assumptions that lead wherever they lead without ever talking about it. So to me, date one. If you know this might be something you're interested in, the sooner you start talking about it, the sooner it becomes a part of your language. It's just another ingredient in your relationship. Talking about sex does not guarantee having sex. It means you're having a conversation about it. That's it.
Well, I want to rewind this for a second because it just something occurs to me. And I like really, I just want to expand on the word meaning a little bit more outside of the context of sex. Because to me, or to some degree, meaning or context. In other words, what's the context of us having this interaction?
Yes.
And I believe that there's misinterpretation of what that context is or the meaning behind this context. Because, I like to date from a vantage point of I'm looking for for lack of a better word, my forever person, a life partner. I date from that, not that the person I'm meeting is that person, but I date with that intent. Now, a lot of dating coaches will tell people don't operate like that. That's not a healthy way to approach it. By the way, it's 11:11 on the clock right now.
Oh, I love a good challenge. I'm a big fan.
I just have to, we can just make a little quick wish. But my point is it's about intention, like the meaning context about interacting with another human being requires some level of intention. And quite frankly, Allie, I believe most people date ambivalently, naively, unconsciously, because we've been indoctrinated to believe that entertainment and romance and physical connection equals relationship success. I mean, and so we shouldn't do anything, any contextualized meaning, because it disrupts the whole delicate balance of attraction. Now, that's my perception. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of avoidance around what it means to be intimate with somebody. And I'm not even talking about necessarily sex. I mean, that is a version of sharing intimacy. But being intimate with somebody is actually quite uncomfortable because the requirement of it is vulnerability. And we have an entire society built from, soup to nuts, telling us not to be uncomfortable, avoid discomfort at all costs. Anything that is making you uncomfortable is wrong. Run away, go the other direction. Uncomfortable and unsafe are not the same thing.
Okay.
So really getting clear on what the differences are for you, like, trauma is a very real thing. Taking responsibility for that, if that's a part of our, if that's a part of our journey, is important. But making sure that we're exposing ourselves to things throughout our lives that make us a little uncomfortable, that's how we grow. Yeah. So I like to bring in the B, boundaries, in this conversation as well. There's this idea that boundaries are these walls, right? There's these edges. You're over there. I'm over here. You can't cross. These are my boundaries. Boundaries are actually the edges of our comfort zone. That's all. And they're actually designed to be pushed safely and consensually in order for us to grow. So that's how we grow. We're not growing if we're not uncomfortable. Again, not unsafe, uncomfortable. So it is uncomfortable to go, hi, stranger. I'm sitting down. This is the kind of stuff I'm interested in and what I'm about. Yeah. How about you? That's a different statement than this is what I'm interested in. And I hope you have it. Like, this is what I'm about. What are you about? A date is just two people getting to know each other. Sure, we have high hopes. We know what we're interested in, but it's going back to your point of the intention, right? Opening up a conversation about sex with the intention of getting to bed with somebody that day is a different thing than opening up a conversation about sex because you're interested in the, type of sexual creature they are.
Sure. And if there's sexual compatibility, if there's sexual alignment, one thing I've learned is our energetic differences between men and women. Again, please forgive me. I'm so used to a heterosexual population, and I know you work with both, all different couples in this conversation. So wait a minute. Well, let's talk about, we talked about the B just now. Let's talk about the D, the desire.
Ooh, yes, the desires.
I want to fix my camera while you're doing that.
Oh God, motion sickness. Everyone going for a ride. Strap in. Desires. Yeah. How do you want to feel from this experience? Not just what do you want to check off, which is great too. If you're looking for a new experience, fantastic. Talk about it. Maybe this is the person that's interested in partnering on that experience with you. Maybe not. But how do you want to feel through this? Are there, are there things you're interested in checking off? Are you more curious about the other person and less committed to anything on your end? Like, what is the purpose of fulfilling any of these desires?
Yeah.
Are you looking to grow? Are you looking for entertainment? None of this is wrong. It's just what are you into? What are you interested in?
Well, it's interesting because I had this conversation with, I told you, an anthropologist, sex educator, and she predominantly, her orientation is kink. It was kind of interesting. I'm going to share something personal with you. See me being vulnerable, opening the kimono, so to speak.
Love it.
And what we were talking about, sexual orientation. And honestly, I'll be candid with you. I've been on this planet for 50 plus years, but to some degree, I thought she was talking Greek to me, even though I've had, I've had physical intimacy before. So we were talking about it from an energetic standpoint. And as I started to describe things, she goes, "You're dominant." Well, in my mind, I was thinking of BDSM, and she
leather
goes,
chains, the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. When she said that word, "You're dominant." Well, as we started to unpack that, it's no, you like to take charge, not from a, whips and chains kind of thing, but you like to be, and you like a person who is, and again, the word submissive was kind of like fingernails on a scratch board. But the way she was describing it was, I like to be in charge, and I like someone who kind of surrenders to that. Okay, the reason why I'm bringing this up is, again, I had a very black and white view of intimacy, both physical and emotional intimacy. And it wasn't until I've had these conversations that I really understand the nuances and the flavor to intimacy, both physical and emotional. In this particular case, physical. I don't have a question in there. I just wanted to say that out loud, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said too, because I'm a writer as well. And I love language. I love words. Terminology can be really useful. But I always like to say, think of these, labels, whether it's polyamory or BDSM or anything. These are conversation starters, not the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
So like you found, it sounds like you bump up against certain terminology, dominant, control, submissive, surrender. Yeah. That's the beauty of kind of starting to explore a little more, because perhaps there's terminology that might be more in alignment. There's a key learning that helped kind of shift how I understood BDSM, especially power dynamics, dom sub, is the idea of dominance as the misinterpretation is power is control.
Yeah.
Wherein in BDSM, power is actually responsibility. So you are caretaking, you are the nurturer, you are responsible for your sub. And a big misconception is that the dom's in charge. No, the dom is responsible. The sub there has been explicit conversations. There is most likely a written contract. Everything is very clear. The sub knows exactly what's going to happen if they do or don't do X, Y, Z. Everything has been pre-negotiated. The sub is actually driving the scene. The dom is just delivering.
Got it. Yeah. And by the way, as you're reflecting that back to me, she said exactly the same thing. Yeah. It was just, I meant it in my particular case from an energetic point of view, from that energy. But yes, and one of the things I did glean from that is that there is this sense of responsibility from a very caretaker, nurturing, protective point of view, which seemed to make sense to me as I began to learn about this. Okay, if we go back to RBDSM, let's talk about when we were talking about sex, I was thinking of the word safety. And particularly, I think you mentioned, in this case, knowing each other's, not each other's STDs, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like sexual history?
Yeah, their sexual history or health. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So especially within the kink space, play parties, it's a very much a part of the conversation, and it's very normal to inquire someone's status.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have, various health apps on their phone, and it could be, there's a lot of nonprofits that do free testing, and they'll just upload, your status, into the app, and you can show someone live. Because unfortunately there is, anywhere in the world, there's good and bad apples. So
Yeah,
some people will doctor photos and stuff like that. So most people are more comfortable seeing you like log into the actual app and, show status, good to go. It's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. And it's also not a big deal if, actually, I'm still getting treatment for something right now. So I'm not actually being active right now, but I wanted to, get together and see if we have a vibe. And then I'd love to, if there's a connection, once I'm clear, not clean, clear.
Okay.
Clean implies dirty.
Well, that's something new to me. So
let's touch on it.
Oh, by the way, before we go that, we're going to go clean and clear, but I just want to take a quick break. Anyone, if you have a question for either Allie or myself, there's a little chat box in the corner. Write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Yes. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $ in the chat box. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him there with his brother, Colin. He's my son who passed away over 6.5 years ago. In his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. And we'd appreciate some love today, maybe $50 for the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. Okay, I just put that out there. Remember, write the word question and post the question thereafter. Okay, Allie, what's the difference between clear and
clean?
Clean. Okay, clean and clear.
So a lot of times you'll hear, oh yeah, no, I'm clean, no STIs. So the implication there is if you have a positive for anything from HSV 1 or 2, which is herpes simplex, to anything treatable like gonorrhea, chlamydia, etc., that somehow that's dirty. Statistically, the majority of the population is currently or will be shortly dealing with some version of this. It is a very common part of being a sexually active adult. Yeah. So the idea that you are dirty if you have STIs is just quite frankly ridiculous. So you are clear if nothing is positive, or you can say, negative tests, whatever terminology, but clean, not the greatest, not particularly appreciated within the space. So if you want a little fun fact, clear is the way to go. Or negative or positive, that kind of thing.
Now I didn't know that.
But that's why these conversations are important. Yeah. This is super important to talk about. This is how we learn.
All right. I'm glad we got clear on that.
Yeah.
I feel really clean. Now, okay. Annika's in the house and she writes, how do we start this conversation about our sexual desires or what we both like in the beginning of the dating process, and what to do if a guy is unwilling to share about this? Ooh, love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Great question. Thank you so much, Annika. So a thing to remember is that we don't ever control other people, what they are or not willing to share with us. We control what we are willing to share, who we want to share it with, in what context, etc. So you get to decide when and if you share what with who. So if you wanted to start early, I always love leading with curiosity, rather than, sitting down on your first date. So look, I want you to put a collar on me and walk me around this restaurant. Probably not the greatest start. Never, it depends on the context of the date, but let's assume that's not what's going on.
We met on an app called Field, and then we probably already got that established.
That's been pre-negotiated. But curiosity is a great place to start. Hey, I just heard about this new film, saw this new film, read this book, article, etc. Something relevant from within your real life. It had this wild thing I'd never heard about. Have you heard about shibari, rope tying? Like, I saw some beautiful photos. I'm blown away. It doesn't even have to be about you. When you're in those initial conversations, curiosity based is the way to go. Because then it's an invitation. And you're also not saying it looks so cool. Like, do you want to do it? It's just, what do you think about that? So it's not a request so much as it is just like an offering and then an inquiry. What do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of interesting, and I want your take on something, and this is just the way I've operated. So, and again, I'm talking about in my world of dating, as a heterosexual man. I've when the conversation of sex rolls around, I always say something. Look, when I'm physically intimate with somebody and we're having physical intimacy on a regular basis, I prefer monogamy. That's how I operate. And if we agree that we're going to be physical regularly, then I also operate with exclusivity, meaning I'm not actively looking to seek and meet new people. And then I just say, how do you operate? Like,
Beautiful.
I just share how I operate. This is how I operate, and I just want to see how you operate.
I think you nail on the head. Like, that is exactly how I would do it, because and I want to draw attention to, you didn't say, are you okay with that? Are you down? Wherein they have to yes, no to what you're down with. It's just like, this is what I'm interested in. How about you? It's an open-ended question that enables you to actually get to know somebody else rather than cornering them into just a yes, no question. You're inviting an actual conversation with that and seeing if you're compatible.
Yeah, and actually, I've used this in other contexts. I remember even just on this was a one-off situation. I remember saying, because there was a woman I met, I liked her, she liked me. And I said, hey, I just want you to know something. When I like someone, I only like to date one person at a time. It doesn't mean we're exclusive. It doesn't mean we're married. It doesn't mean anything. I just like to give my attention because there's so many distractors out there. And she said, no. Like, or not, no, I wasn't, I was saying how I operate. She didn't seem to agree with that. And it occurred to me, I could already feel the energy bleeding from her, kind of thing, like it was an energetic mismatch. And that's not to suggest I'm expecting exclusivity or commitment. It's just, I believe, at least in the current environment, with so many distractions, with the dating apps, with the bombardment, to really get to know a person requires an investment of time. And I'm not suggesting you need that much time to know if you want to explore something with someone, but that's just something, again, this is how I operate. How do you operate?
Exactly. And I mean, and that goes for, consent conversations as well. A lot of times that consent is seen as a question, hey, can I kiss you? Again, that's that yes or no. You're cornering them in, you're shutting yourself down because they might not want to kiss you, but they might want to cuddle.
Yeah.
And you're not even giving them that opportunity. But it's like, hey, I think you're beautiful. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'd really love, just like a gentle kiss on the lips. What are you interested in? Totally different.
What are you interested in? Okay.
Or, how are you feeling?
I get that. I like that. Annika adds something here. She says, in Europe, we are so much more open to talk about sex and eroticism, but I find that guys shy away from it or look at me differently if I bring it up in the conversation. Interesting. What are your thoughts on that, Allie?
I'd be interested to know, my dad had a saying, expand your circles. So I'm a nerd. I'm a scientist. Like, I'm all about data. I'm like, if I notice a pattern, I'm like, let me change an aspect and see if that shifts anything. So if you're noticing a pattern of, when I do this thing, the guys I tend to go on dates with react this way. Are you meeting these guys in the same way? Are you having the same kinds of conversations? Look at the data points. I know that doesn't sound very sexy. It is to me, but I'm a nerd. And I guarantee, I assure you, I say with full, utter confidence from my toes to the top of my head, there are plenty of men out there who will not look at you strangely when you talk about that sort of a thing. So it's looking at, again, things like, where are you meeting them? How are you meeting them? What kinds of conversations are you having, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How are you screening the people that you're willing to spend time and energy in getting together with? And look at, change one variable at a time. And see
I would also think how you frame it. And again, I'm always a believer if we frame things from a place of curiosity.
Exactly.
There's something about that invites conversation. And certainly there are plenty of men that would take that possibly as like, hey, I'm going to get into this person's pants really easily because they led with that. But I believe that when we operate, how we frame it, and we operate from a place of curiosity. And again, you can set the boundary, I mean, just because it might give the implication of something is not a permission, until you have that, mutual.
Exactly. It's explicit, right? So it's a conversation is not an agreement. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
So being really clear with that, and also leaving room for people to hit those boundaries.
Yeah.
Because especially if you're just getting to know each other and you're opening up a conversation that maybe they've never had before, maybe they're actually nervous but excited that there's actually somebody they can talk about this with. And if they, ask a question that you're actually not willing to answer and you jump down their throat, it's going to make it a lot harder for them to have that conversation again in the future. So we're also responsible for how we're showing up. Are we a welcoming environment for these conversations, for people to be a little uncomfortable with us? Do we go, oh, you know what? Thank you for asking that question. I'm not actually comfortable talking about that right now, but I'll let you know if I'm willing to revisit it again later.
By the way, Annika was sweet enough to give us a $10 super sticker. Thank you for the love. We appreciate it. So something occurred to me, and you said something earlier that triggered this for me. And when I say triggered, just inspired it, I mean, trigger isn't
those are my
always
kind of triggers. Those are my kind of triggers, inspiration.
Yeah. So, it occurs to me, and my experience has been, particularly for women, I would say well over 2/3 of women who I've met over the years have experienced some level of sexual trauma in some way, shape, or form. And it could be much higher than that. That's just my own anecdotal. I'd like to dive into this, and I have no idea where I want to go, but I just want to start the conversation. And do you mind taking it whatever direction you think it should go?
Sure. So it's actually a great point. So that RBDSM framework, some people add a T at the end. It can be a capital T, it can be a lowercase t, because trauma can come in a capital or a lowercase. Our bodies experience trauma. Yeah. And all of our bodies are different. So you and I could go through the same exact experience on the same day in the same environment, and it could just be another day for you, and it could completely traumatize me. Neither one of us is wrong. It's just an experience. However, it is now my responsibility to take ownership over where I'm at with that. So if I know that, I'm still working on certain not so great triggers in, sexual environments, for example, that needs to be a part of the conversation if I'm going to engage with somebody at that level. Hey, no choking. This is not something I'm able to do right now. You don't need to go any deeper than that. They just need to know it's a boundary. It doesn't need to be a therapy session. And I want to make a quick distinction.
Well, I think, and please forgive me for interrupting. I think where I was going with this is that not so much from for lack of a better word, kink perspective, but I was thinking of it more particularly, I've known so many women who over the years I've dated, and even clients who've experienced some sort of sexual assault type of trauma. That's where I was kind of leading in that. Now, certainly how that may show up or manifest in an encounter could, like you said, it could be different from one moment to the next. But I have this deep sadness to hear that it's that high of a number. And okay, speaking as a potential partner with someone who's experienced that, what should a potential partner should that be something they should know, that this person that they're with has experienced that? Like, where's the line between sharing your past versus creating complications for the future? I'm spitballing here.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question to answer generally. Because trauma is, an individual experience. And so I think the best way I can think of to answer that would be to the degree that it impacts the relationship. So if it's coming up, if it's, it's helpful from so I'm a coach, not a therapist. And what that means is therapy generally tends to look at the past, focusing on diagnoses, pathology. It really helps you understand how you got here. Coaching is, we're looking at here and building tools to create that future, right? So how is it impacting you now? Taking responsibility for, I'm actually in therapy for this. That can be as much of the conversation as it is. This is what I'm doing to address this, just so you know. Your partner is not your therapist. That is not a great, framing for the relationship. But to the degree that whatever the trauma may be, to the degree that it impacts the relationship, if you're building a partnership, it can be helpful for them to understand where you're at in your journey with it. But it's not their responsibility to take care of that for you, if that makes sense.
Okay, no, it absolutely does. So, okay, well, I'm going to go down a different road, and it doesn't have to be sexual.
I do love those roads.
Pardon me?
I said I do love those roads too, but yes, we can go down other ones.
it occurs to me that, if you've been around the block for a little bit of time, I mean, my audience predominantly is what I call midlife, which is after baby making years and before retirement. That's my predominant audience. And if you've been in that category, chances are you've had one or two significant relationships, sometimes a number of minor relationships. But most importantly, we all come to the table with some level of wounds in some way, shape, or form. It could be sexual. It could be, I have a money wound that I'm very aware of that relates to when I lost my high-end corporate job and I got wiped out in the market crash, and there's a variety of different wounds we all carry. And some people believe that we should date with mystery. In other words, don't share who we are, let them unravel it over a long period of time, because if you share something, that it will scare someone away. I kind of have, I mean, I don't think you should vomit everything on a first date, but I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts about sharing those wounds, especially if you are with somebody that has potential.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what you're talking about with intention. What is your purpose? Excuse me.
Yeah.
What is your purpose of sharing this? Are you dumping this? Oh, I need you to know this so we can trauma bond. And
yeah.
Or are you saying, hey, I trust you. I want you to know more of me. And like, this is, I like to share from an empowered place, especially if something that's new, especially if there's potential. This is what I'm doing about my life. This is how I handle, my conflicts, things I bump up against, my trauma, etc.
Yeah.
This is getting to know me. If I don't feel empowered in that share, then I'm not ready to share that.
Got it. Well, I've always believed if it's material to the relationship, then some level of transparency. And again, if there's a potential, I mean, again, if it's material to a relationship or it's material to a person considering a relationship, I think the sooner we talk about those uncomfortable conversations, it builds trust, it builds intimacy. And it has the potential of really helping a relationship flourish. By the way, we have a question that came in from Aisha.
Yes.
Why do some men lead with sexual questions? I actually don't like how guys have asked me directly about sex and making a determination if they want to get into a relationship with me or not. What is your take on that? I know I have my take.
I have a few. There's some really juicy things in there. So let's see where to start. So we have different types of desire, and that we have responsive desire and we have spontaneous desire. Spontaneous desire is it's just there. You don't need any inspiration. You're ready to go. And responsive is like flirting is happening. Maybe there's some kissing. You're working things up.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak a little gendered. This is not exclusively so, but generally most men have a higher level of spontaneous desire.
You heard me laugh.
Have more responsive. I know. However, this also needs to be taken into context in relationships. So most long-term relationships, regardless of gender composition, two women, men, others, man, woman, whatever, there tends to be an increase in responsive desire and a decrease in spontaneous desire for each other. So that question of, they're leading with sexual questions, they're finding you desirable, they're interested in connecting with you that way. There's also an element of how we're wired chemically. Intimacy can be sexual and emotional. We can build emotional intimacy through physical intimacy, and some people can replace one with the other. But it's important to have those conversations up front, because for some people, those sexual needs, those desires that, whether you want to call it drive or not, it is an important part of a relationship for them. And that's okay. That is okay. So being able to talk about your needs up front is important. If that's all they're talking about and you have other things you're interested in and they're not letting you talk about that, or they're not responding or whatever, they're not for you.
Yeah.
They're not evil. There's something wrong here. They're not for you, and they're giving you that information. But if they're sharing that, they're also leaving room for you to ask your questions, etc. That's the process of getting to know each other.
Sure.
So it's important to understand, are we matched? Do we have, mismatched libidos or, sexual desires? And this is a part of the conversation. So if it's not a match, that's okay.
Well, I want to, oh, I love this. And I want to go down two different rabbit holes here. One is, it has been said that men find love through sex and women give sex or give
Yeah,
sex
that's
to
kind
get
of where
love.
I was
Yeah.
leaning.
But it occurs to me, and I don't think this is an unfair statement, although it may seem this way, is to me, sexual compatibility is part of the decision-making process for commitments. Like, in other words,
For a lot of people, not everybody.
yeah. I mean, generally speaking, it's now let's go back in time, 50, 60 years ago. You had to get married before you had sex, at least for heterosexuals.
And marriage had
you,
nothing to do with love or intimacy. Let's
yeah,
also
exactly.
be clear about that.
Yeah. But my point is you had to make a commitment before, and to some degree, again, as I shared before, I like to lead with, hey, I'm monogamous and I'm exclusive when I'm physical with someone. But I think there's nothing wrong. I know men get a bad rap for leading with sex, okay? But that might be his portal for long-term commitment. I would generally say that's not the case. They usually just want to get laid. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's exclusive to that. It could mean that, hey, this might be their entry point, but they still might be monogamous, exclusive, fully committed. I don't think men deserve as big a bad rap as they get, because you can say, look, I'm not interested in having this conversation until we get to know each other better.
Yeah. And you're giving them parameters, and there might be some of them that are like, oh, great. And there'll be some that you're like, that's a deal breaker. Great. That's the point of dating. You're getting to know each other. And if it is important to them at that level, then I sure hope they're bringing it up really early, because there's no reason either of you need to continue seeing each other if you don't have the same priorities for, important components of relationship.
Yeah. By the way, we have two more questions coming in, but Allie, do you remember why it's called dating when we talked before we got started?
It's shorter.
It's shorter than
short
holy fucking shit. Trying to figure out another human being is insane. So they replaced it with the word dating in the dictionary. Okay. But that's what's next to it. Okay. Annika's in the house again. What if a guy says that he would become exclusive only after we are intimate? That matters to me as well. Having great intimacy is important. So how do we approach exclusivity then? Ooh, I have something to say, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Well, my question to him would be, what does exclusive mean? And what does intimate mean? I need more definitions, because like a big one I see a lot of times is exclusive, right? Or is related to cheating, for example. But then I'll be working with a couple and they both have two completely different definitions of what cheating is. She thinks watching porn is cheating. He thinks, nothing other than penetrative vaginal sex is cheating.
Yeah.
They both think they're adhering to the right thing, and they're not for each other. So this is where these conversations come in handy, and where it's important to go, oh, you used a really a word that comes with a lot of weight. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important, as I said, to define those things, especially what the meaning, coming back to the BDSM, RBDSM, coming back to that and getting clarity on the meaning. But I also believe that monogamy doesn't happen until the second time you have sex. I mean, technically, the first time you have sex, you may never see the person again. So there is no monogamy, right? It's when you agree to having it on a regular basis. And exclusivity is the same way. It's if you agree to be seeing each other on a regular basis, then those words have more meaning to them, at least in my vantage point. But if you have a different perspective on that, I'm happy to hear that as well.
Oh yeah, I have it's a yes and to that. And it may be a little uncomfortable for some folks to hear, but it's how it relates to the agreements we make around relationship. Now, our relationships are just agreements that we make with each other. And those agreements can shift and change, but it's why it's important to talk about them as we're each growing and changing, and our needs are changing, because all of those things change. But a lot of us assume the relationship is supposed to stay exactly the same, and we never talk about anything that's shifting. Yeah. So a big thing that comes up in our space, in the dating and relationship space, is sexless marriage.
Yeah.
And it's this big, big sore wound for a lot of people. A lot of people are really hurting in this space. And what it comes down to for me is that a relationship has been renegotiated without the consent of everyone involved.
Yeah.
You signed up for what you both agreed was a monogamous relationship. Maybe you decide, you determined specifically what that meant, but generally there's the assumption that it's one sexual and romantic partner for life.
Yeah.
Not zero. So when you cut that out, you have broken the agreement. You need to renegotiate it. This is where, again, getting really clear, throwing a label like marriage, exclusive, etc. You've got to talk about these things and what they mean at different points along your relationship journey as well.
I heard someone say, I agreed to monogamy, but I didn't sign up for celibacy.
Exactly.
I mean, that's literally what you were just saying. And
we punish people for wanting sex, but no one needs to be punished. It needs to be a conversation.
Exactly. So coming back to meaning, you might, and we've got another question I'm going to take in a second, but you might appreciate this. So my audience that knows me and follows me, I always encourage them to ask men, what does a relationship mean to you? What does that word mean to you? What does it mean to you? But also, what does it look like for you? Like, and when I say look like let's get a calendar and describe, and I'm saying this facetiously, but figuratively speaking, what would it look like for you to have some context? Because coming back to the M, meaning, I think sadly in the dating realm today, we don't understand each other's, like when somebody says, oh, I want a relationship. Well, that's just a word, because today that could be hook up, that could be friends with benefits, that could be situationship, could be casual, it could be serious, it could be marriage, Is there more?
And it's this again, the assumptions, right? That like all dating processes should be the same, all signals mean the same thing from the same people. So for example, you said calendar, right? Time, that's a big one, especially when you have more than one partner. It takes a lot of calendar negotiation. But when you're dating, let's say a CEO, there's going to be a lot of differences in availability, especially time-wise, than if you're dating somebody who's just got a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Somebody who's an entrepreneur. So talking about things like how, I love that prompt. What does relationship mean to you? What does it look like to you? How often do you see us seeing each other, at this point?
I've had this challenge because I have a very flexible lifestyle. I work from wherever I want. And I said, I'm looking for someone with a flexible lifestyle. And she goes, oh, I'm looking only to be in a relationship with someone 1 day a week. And I'm like, well, we're misaligned because I want 3 or 4 days and nights together kind of thing. Yeah. So this is where context or meaning is so important. Okay. Aisha's back in the house and she says, when men find out that I am celibate, they don't stick around. Is it possible to have a healthy relationship with a man and not have sex?
1000%.
Yeah.
It's the short answer. So it falls under the, asexual spectrum, the gray sexual spectrum, people who may not have as high a priority for the physical sexual component of a relationship. That's where the power of terminology, knowing yourself, can come in, because you can be super upfront about that. Hey, I'm celibate, whether it's for this amount of time or for the foreseeable future. I identify as asexual, whatever. I don't want to, label you. You know how you identify, but being really clear about that, meeting you will be a relief to those men.
Yeah.
Because that's why it's like, what is the saying? I can never remember. Like, we're all trying to fit ourselves into what we think we're supposed to be, but then like our people can't hear us. Let that flag go. Like, let that freak flag fly, whatever freak means to you. Like, that's how we find each other. Vanilla, it doesn't matter what color it is, doesn't matter but let it be. Yes, not everyone is for you. Thank you for the no. You just brought me closer to my yes. Thank you so much.
Well, you could literally on some level lead with, hey, this is who I am on your dating app. And that, 100%. And by the way, in all fairness, because she says men don't stick around, well, maybe, and it's not, again, there's nothing wrong with a man that doesn't want that either, that he wants a healthy sex life.
Absolutely.
And so maybe leading with that and only communicating with people that fit that, that, what's the word I'm looking for? That, that same, I don't want to use the word box, but that same desire, coming back to
same framework, the
framework
dynamics, right? So
Yeah.
Everything I talk about is dynamics. I don't ever want anyone here to hear me as saying, non-monogamy good, monogamy bad. These are all relationship dynamics, relationship styles. I like to talk about your relationship design. When you understand all the relationship things that are out there, all the different ways of relating, and you understand yourself, you understand things like, I'm actually choosing to be celibate and this is why. And then you can actually build relationships that support you and the other people or person involved. It's all just when you get your relationship design, you can design a relationship that works.
Exactly. All right. We got another one from Kathy Canadian. And she asks, it's been a very, very long time since I've been with a man. My man is coming to visit me for a week and we haven't had sex yet. When should I let him know that about my dry spell before we're intimate?
So I'm hearing a concern between the lines here, because there is no mathematical equation for when you let someone know about anything.
Okay.
What I would love to understand is, what is your concern? How do you think this perceived, I want to say too, dry spell, because a long, long time for you might be very short for somebody else, or even longer. Like, it's all contextual. So what is your concern about how that's going to impact how you show up, et cetera? Like, what is the concern underneath that? That's the real conversation.
Yeah, I would say I'm known, and I've worked with women who've shared this in that they haven't been physically intimate with someone for several years, maybe in some cases for half a decade or even a decade. And I know, and Kathy, only because I know you from the channel and whatnot, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Well, I don't know you well enough to say what I'm going out on a limb here for, but I think some of it is we're out of practice, like, to the extent of like riding a bicycle. Gee, I forgot how to pedal, or that could be the concern, or could it be concerned that from a physical perspective, because I was thinking dry spell, I was thinking also vaginal dryness, that could possibly be what she meant. But there's an element of opening yourself up physically to someone you haven't been with, or well, it's a stranger for one thing, but when you haven't been physically intimate with someone, that can be a very scary, vulnerable place to be. And again,
what you're talking about is intimacy. It's actual intimacy before we're even getting to sex. This is the intimacy of, hey, I'm nervous. What's more beautiful and vulnerable than like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Like, you're letting someone in. That's scary. There's no equation here. It's just uncomfortable. And that's intimacy. It's beautiful.
I'm smiling here because I believe if we could have more vulnerable, authentic, transparent conversations where you can actually start having a real dialogue instead of the way most people are dating today. How's your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day kind of conversations.
Checking off the list.
Yeah, I'm that's my Seinfeld spiel. When you start to have these kind of saying, I'm scared, and you get to really see the makeup of another person too. I really do believe this gives us some perceptions as to a person's empathy, to a person's character. When you say, I'm scared, do they only care about themselves and let me get you into bed in this particular case? Or are they like, hey, what can I do to make you feel more comfortable?
Exactly. Is there any kind of touch that does feel comforting to you? Do you want to not do touch tonight and focus instead on sound, smell? There's so many senses we can use to connect. We don't have to go straight to touch.
Yeah. So folks, the reason why I brought Allie on is so we could have these kind of conversations. Well, not that we could. I mean, it's that I'm encouraging these kind of conversations, whether it's monogamy, ethical non-monogamy, whatever that's important to you, whether it's physical or it's just from I want to get to know you place. I think it's important to start growing up. And what I mean by growing up is that we've been indoctrinated into believing entertainment, romance, and physical connection is the pathway to relationship success. And I'm here to say the real way to create connection with someone is to open up to another human being by asking some of those questions that in the past may be uncomfortable, but it's about getting to know someone.
100%. And I really just really quick, I want to make sure I take a moment to really just share my appreciation for you welcoming me into this space, because it is these conversations, like, again, I'm not here to say anyone's version of relationship is wrong. My mission is to outfit everyone with the knowledge that they need to understand relationship across the board so that you can actually choose yours, because we were talking so much about assumptions. So much of what people are doing right now is assumptive monogamy. Oh, well, this is what relationship is, so this is what I should be doing. You're not actually building it for your relationship design. And so there's a lot of unnecessary struggle and heartache, and that doesn't mean you need to go be polyamorous or anything, but understanding all relationship dynamics helps you really choose your relationship and build it mindfully for success and longevity. And that's what I'm about. Because like you said earlier, if we were having these kinds of conversations, if we were opening up, I like to say, whether you want to open up your relationship to include other people or you just want to open up more authentically to each other, I like to help people open up without blowing up. And if our world leaders were better fucked, we'd be less fucked. And that means these kinds of conversations. We need to get uncomfortable together.
By the way, I always say we're all fucked up. It's just a matter of degrees, and so really quickly, BL Wayne says, I think that most people that are dating or trying to date avoid those uncomfortable conversations, which is really sad. And we're going to we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. But before we do, you have a free gift for everybody that I posted in the show notes. So it's a gift from Allie. Do you want to share with everybody what that is?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was so excited to come on tonight. And I think, again, these conversations are so important, coming from curiosity. So many of us are looking for that life partner or life partners, but just we're looking to have more authentic relationships. How do we connect with each other more effectively? And like you said, so many people are doing that through apps. And so many people are not getting any matches or not the right matches, or it just feels like this endless swiping. So again, I'm a nerd. So backed by tons of research and data points, fine-tuned by AI, Allie Eisman. Gotcha. I created your foolproof dating profile blueprint. So it's the stop the swipe system, basically. Stop becoming a left swipe and become Mr. or Mrs. Right swipe. So how to present yourself effectively and clearly to really start drawing in the people that are right for you, because it's not a numbers game, it's a quality game. Are you talking to the right people? Your time and your energy is priceless. Make sure you're spending it on the right people. And so
everyone, so if you want to get that, there's a link in the show notes. It'll take you to Allie's site and you can get to all that good stuff.
Swipestopper.com.
It's interesting. We've got a few more minutes before we wrap up. I've been wondering the evolution of dating going forward. I think right after COVID, we have hit a gigantic wall. And to the extent that COVID actually really helped the online world grow in a really, whether it's a healthy or unhealthy way, certainly COVID created that. But I think people are just burnt out. They are frustrated with the online connecting. And yet many people live lives that don't put them in front of single eligible people. And to some of us, we're tired of well, just go to a meetup group or just go do this, or I don't feel like wanting to do that, partially, especially for the demographic that I speak to. Where do you see the evolution of dating? I'm just curious over the next year or two.
Yeah, I think there's two. There's where do I see it going? Where do I want it to go?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Two different things. Because I actually, not just because my initials are AI, I actually do love the potential that AI gives us, as long as we're using it as a tool to connect rather than letting it turn us into one. So if you're on the apps, there's nothing wrong with that. But use it as a tool to get off the apps, get in person, connect with each other. And that's why, again, I created this tool to make it as effective as possible at getting you IRL, getting you together in real life. I do see trends moving towards, people wanting to meet in person, but that burnout, we're exhausted because we're spending so much time ineffectively and so much energy ineffectively. So if we can really harness these incredibly powerful tools that we're developing on the tech side to make us more effective at connecting in person. That doesn't mean use AI to learn how to talk to No, learn how to use it and learn and develop those connection tools yourself so that you're ready when you're in person.
Yeah.
Really developing our intimacy, our empathy, our ability to be uncomfortable.
So you might get a kick out of this, and then we'll wrap up on this. So
Yeah.
I think it was yesterday. I've been using ChatGPT for a variety of different business reasons and such. So I said, you know what? I think I typed in, look, you're connected to everybody in the world. Can you just nudge the right person to reach out to me? Like I asked AI to just go find her and send her my way. and I honestly don't remember the response, but it was kind of an interesting dialogue I was having over this particular conversation. And by the way, he or she, I don't know, well, I don't feel comfortable saying it.
Them? Them?
Them, said you're going to either meet at like a retreat or some sort of workshop, that sort of thing, or she's just going to find you on YouTube. So anyway, it was interesting to hear what AI had to say.
That's beautiful. So that's a great way of looking at this tool rather than, create a conversation, talk to this. Yeah. All the chat bots that people are building, talk to as many people as possible for me. No, help me understand myself. What are my patterns? What am I into? What is the highest probability? Really learn how to use this tool. It's not there to do stuff for you. It's there to help you distill and be more effective at what you're already doing. So I think that was a great example, actually. Where am I most likely?
Oh, you know what? The question, I'm in a Facebook group with a group of people that are playing with this as a toy to some degree. And the question that was asked is, tell me my top 10 blind spots, and holy shit. When I read this, I'm like, oh my God, was it like on target? So just an interesting thing. So Allie, thank you so much for being on. This was a lot of fun.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much again for having me. I really love having these kinds of conversations.
Yeah. So everyone, thanks for joining in today to talk about the crucial conversations about sex before sleeping with a man or woman or whatever your orientation is. I hope you found value in this conversation. And again, if you want to connect with Allie directly, in the show notes below is a link to check out her gift for everyone. Kathy Canadian says, Allie and Jonathan, thank you. Jane says, thank you. BL says, thank you. Everybody's chiming in. B.I. Simmons says, thank you. So everybody, thanks for being on. Wishing you all a super duper wonderful evening. Be well. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye now. Bye. Bye, Joe Davis.